Live from Action News 5 Studio, you're watching A Better Memphis.
Welcome back to A Better Memphis. Public education has become a major topic in our community for months now, years really. But from school vouchers to cutting federal education funding to a state takeover possibly this year for MSCS, well, education is in the news. Joining us today to talk about public education is Brian Stevens, the CEO of Caissa K12, a strategy firm serving public school districts, including Memphis, Tennessee, and welcome. Welcome to A Better Memphis.
Well, thanks for having me again, Joe. I really appreciate it. And you pronounced the name correct. You're probably the first person in years that's done it right. Thank you.
Well, I had to have help first. We got coached. We went to school on it. Well, let's start with Memphis Shelby County Schools. You recently launched a new podcast called Public Education Unfiltered. Your first guest was a person we want in that chair right there. You got him before we did, MSCS Interim Superintendent Dr. Roderick Richmond. He talked about his 90-day plan, part of it being a focus on making 5 to 10% literacy gains. In your experience, how have you seen literacy change or been improved or lack of improvement at MSCS?
Well, I think that globally, we spent about an hour talking about his goals and his objectives, and I was a little biased. I was a little concerned about the future for all of our students here, but I got to tell you, it seems like, he does. The superintendent, the new superintendent, is very focused on creating those fundamentals, the foundational elements that I think have been missed. So certainly literacy and math are a big focus. And I was glad to hear him focus on trying to correct that, the earth is not flat. People need to know how to balance your checkbook and all those foundational elements. And he seemed really focused on that. And I think he's the guy to do it. And I didn't think that necessarily before the podcast, but I do now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you know, the state of Tennessee still has a bill in the legislature, the Republican leadership, the supermajority, and they have a lot of power in Nashville. And they might, Representative Mark White, the chairman of the House Education Committee, is the undisputed leader in education in Tennessee politics. And what do you think about the state possibly taking over MSCS?
Well, I think that there's school choice and then there's the state takeover, right? I think that school choice, vouchers, and other programs are been gaining ground for the last 15 to 20 years. And once you open up that can of competition, it's not going to go away. So competition is something that we all have got to be prepared for, provided that we're all competing on a level playing field, which public schools and private schools and charter schools, they're just not, and there's a lot of history behind that. But to answer your question about a state takeover, well, I think my biggest issue right now is certainty. We need to know who the leader is going to be. We need to know what the goals are going to be so we can hold them accountable. And that's what the new superintendent's doing. Now, if the state's going to take over or not take over, they need to make up their minds. A couple years of having uncertainty doesn't make people want to row in the same direction with clear goals. And I think that's a problem. I think what's most likely to happen, if I was going to be a cricket on your shoulder, is they're going to create an advisory board. It's going to come in here and provide some oversight, but they're not going to take over the school district. School districts need to be occupied by people that are accountable to the people in that area. And that's always a more effective model.
All right. Yeah. Let's talk about those vouchers, school choice. It passed this year. Governor Bill Lee very much wanted this bill, and he used all his strength and got it this time. How do vouchers impact public and private schools here?
Well, I think there's a difference between what the intent of it is and what actually happens on the ground, right? I think the intent's probably pretty good. I mean, we're Americans. We believe in competition. You get out there and start to compete, and it's supposed to rise. All the ships and all the schools are supposed to do better. That was the intent, and I love that idea. But in practicality, public schools, traditional public schools, just have loads of bureaucracy going back to the 70s that they have to abide by. Complete transparency, and by the way, public schools are funded to teach towards test taking and graduation rates.
Right.
Now,
TCAP.
I've got about 100 employees at the office. I never have once given any of them a standardized test. Never once have I done that. But that's what we've dictated as a society we want public schools to do, and we need to uncork that. It's not the school's fault. It's not the teachers or the principals or the superintendent's fault. It's us as a society and government that said, this is what we're going to pay you to do. And we have to uncork the funding model to really allow public schools to compete evenly so the parents can just have what's right for their family. But right now, we kind of hamstringing the public education system. That's really dangerous long term.
And very quickly, there's no TCAP for these private schools. There's no metrics that will determine whether or not these private education dollars are a good investment.
None. And we started off on that journey a long time ago. Our daughter was in private school, and I don't think she was getting a good education, so we switched her back to public schools. And she performed well because of certain standards. So yeah, I mean, how are we going to judge what's equal in a choice of real fair competition?
All right. Brian Stevens, CEO of Caissa K12. Thank you for joining us here on A Better Memphis. We hope you'll come back.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Because I know that's something close to your heart.
It is. We gotta rise all the ships so all these kids become really productive, knowledgeable citizens.
Thank you, sir. All right, you can go back and watch any of our interviews from A Better Memphis on actionnews5.com. Just click A Better Memphis in the bar at the top of our homepage. Here's what's coming up on this broadcast. Memphis Police Department will be here to talk about domestic violence in our city and what we're doing to fight it. Thanks for joining us for A Better Memphis on this Monday, March 3rd. Action News 5 will be right back.